You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is the Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us Saturday, September 30th for our Sobriety Sprint 5K as we remember, honor, and celebrate those who've lost their lives. This family-focused event will feature a 1-mile fun run, inflatables, food trucks, and more. Register to run or honor a loved one at sobrietysprint.com. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Got a photography episode for you today and a fellow person from the UK, which I love. So you're going to get a lot of accents in today's episode. Gives me great pleasure to welcome to the podcast photographer, Mr. Paul Smith. Thanks for coming down.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Mike. Nice to be here.
Definitely. You're from Sunderland back in the UK.
Yep.
Are you a Sunderland fan or are you a Newcastle fan?
I'm neither, to be honest. I never quite got into the whole soccer scene. But
Yeah. What rugby teams are up there? You into rugby as well?
I used to play a lot, but once again, just never really.
Is it league in the north over Union?
Oh man, you're going back. We're going back 35 years ago. Yeah. I can't even think.
But grew up in Sunderland then?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about growing up in Sunderland. For people listening that are in Oklahoma, they have no idea where Sunderland is. So. Yeah.
So Sunderland is a little. It's a little shipbuilding town on the northeast coast of England. So it's very down to earth place. It was a really nice place to grow up. Like, you can drive for 20-25 minutes and kind of be out in some of the nice countryside, and there's lots of history around there. As you know, like back in the UK, you're just tripping over castles and cathedrals and stuff. So
spoiled.
There's lots of really neat stuff. The only thing it was really short of is dark night skies, just because it's so populated, and it was a really nice place to I guess grow up.
Do you have family, brothers and sisters back home? How long were you growing? How long were you back home before you made the switch to come to the States?
Yeah, everybody's there. Basically, I got a brother and sister, and my mom and dad are there. And I actually left in 2000 just on a student work visa, and I went to Canada. It was kind of like an exchange program for postgrads, and so I went to Canada, and it was only meant to be for 6 weeks. Yeah. I went with $800 on my account, and I went to Canada, to Calgary. I was going to make my fortune as a bartender in Banff. It was like I had all these grandiose ideas of fun things to do as a 20-year-old, right? And so I went to Canada, and kind of ran out of money very, very quickly, and the bartending scene wasn't really very hot. I kind of found some jobs for $5 an hour, which obviously weren't going to cut it. And moved around like youth hostels just because I couldn't afford anything else with my friend. We just kind of moved around youth hostels, and then we bumped into a bunch of guys who were in the oil and gas industry, which was really booming back then in 2000. And they said, hey, just we can get you out of work probably next week. We always need people. It's just like labor, right? Like real down to the ground labor type work where you're hiking through the woods and moving equipment around all day for 14 hours a day, 30 days in a row kind of thing. And so, I fell into that oil and gas work there, started off as a laborer, and from my time in the youth hostels in Canada. And, they paid for travel. When you're in oil and gas, they paid for you to travel. I traveled all over Canada on the company's dime kind of thing. I got to see Quebec and the Northwest Territories. I went north of the Arctic Circle one winter. It was just a really, really cool experience.
Wow.
Yeah, for a guy from Sunderland, it was like I was doing a lot of traveling, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful up there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Gorgeous.
Yeah. So you kind of graduate uni back home, and then you go to Canada. What was your degree in uni?
It was biomedical science.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty switched on as a kid growing up then.
Yes, sort of. I mean, I haven't used it since.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was, I originally wanted to be a veterinarian, and so that was the direction to take at the time. And that's the piece of paper I ended up with.
and at the time, you just think, we go to Canada on a student visa or work visa and just kind of have a bit of a gap year, have some time off before you decide to, and then obviously you bump into the oil and gas guys and travel around.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, Canada was always, was always in my blood. Just, I always had the picture books of the green trees, the evergreens, and the mountains and stuff. And I just, it was always in my blood for some reason from a very early age. So it was almost like it was meant to be that I was going to go there. And then I met my wife online, and she came up there and tried a winter out and said, no, I'm not going to do a winter. So I tried out Oklahoma, and obviously the winters here are a lot more mild.
A little bit. Yeah.
And so we ended up here after all that.
Yeah. So what happened to your friend you were traveling with? Did they kind of get a job as well, or did they go back home?
Yeah, he's actually doing really well. He lives in Saskatchewan. Yeah. So, he's doing very good. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's much easier for us, isn't it? Like, come from the UK to go to Canada and get a visa than it is to come to the States, especially working as well.
It is, yeah.
It's huge. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I have a buddy of mine in high school. He's in Vancouver now, and same thing. Work visa was a lot easier to get than the work visa for the States.
Is that right? Yeah.
Pretty close. Yeah. So when does, I guess, you talk about getting, knowing that Canada was pretty and having books and stuff and seeing pictures, was photography on the mind early on, or was that something that's come later?
It always was. I never had a very good camera, but I always had something, it seems. Yeah. Now I look back, I was just looking the other day, I was showing my son a bunch of used to have disposable cameras earlier on, and I still got a bunch of those pictures at home in a shoebox. You take a disposable camera picture of a mountain scene, and it's kind of, it doesn't look very good.
It's not the same seeing it in person, right?
Yeah, there's not much you can do with it. But it was always, I guess, in me. And then I invested in, because the whole Canada story was pretty exciting, and I'm like, so I wanted to show the folks at home, so I invested in a high video camera. I don't know if you remember those. It took those little tips, and so I have 50 of those tips sitting at home right now too. I need to convert to digital, but that's awesome. It's before the days of cell phones and having a video camera on your cell phone and all that stuff. I mean, being able to record stuff was pretty novel back then.
Yeah. How long were you there before you moved to Oklahoma?
I met my wife, I guess 2007 is when kind of moved to Oklahoma. So I was there for 7 years, 2000 to 2007. And then I made the full move to Oklahoma in 2009.
Okay.
And I still commuted to Canada for work right up until about 2019 here. And then the oil and gas work just kind of, the bottom fell out. So I had to make moves.
Yeah. Well, so you just progressed through the company from, like I said, lugging stuff around as a 20-year-old, just, with all the energy in the world and being in the mountains, to being there for quite, almost 20 years.
Yeah. It's like a very, it's very high ceiling if you've got the work ethic. And then, so I moved through the laborer side of it into survey, into GIS mapping. And then when I left, I was like a self-employed supervisor. So I was supervising big crews and doing the mapping and almost running an entire job myself and organizing the crews and stuff. So it was really fun. It was a good challenge.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you could, the thing I really liked about it is when you get better at it, it's getting more efficient. My days were a lot shorter, so I could actually do some photography at night. And because you're gone, you're physically gone into a camp or a town for like 30, 40 days, and you're there obviously all day and all night. But if you do your work, then the rest of the night is your own kind of thing. So that worked out good for my photography.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, because I guess, you've got to be there, right? And as I said, as you progress, you have, you're managing. So unless, you've got like a disaster or something needs your attention, you're just kind of there because you have to be there. And then, you obviously got a passion for photography, so you kind of fill your time with the beautiful scenery that you're around.
Exactly, yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. And I mean, that's to commute up until 2019. I mean, that's just a month at a time. Like, you go up there 30, 40 days, and then, or did that kind of lessen as well?
I would generally drive up mid-September.
Did you drive up there?
Yeah.
How was that?
Long. It's like 2.5 days usually.
Yeah. Just to have a vehicle up there so you could drive around?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I'd have to have my vehicle and a four-wheeler, and all my equipment. I had big plotters, big printers to use, because I had to print off my maps for people and stuff. So I had a lot of gear. Like, I had a Jeep that I'd be sitting in the driver's seat, and this was just gear. I couldn't see out that window, and the whole back is just full of my gear,
Yeah.
And I would drive up mid-September and then just fly home every 40 days or something, and then drive the Jeep back down, April, late April, early May kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, because it's seasonal, you can only do the work when the ground is frozen there.
Sure.
So it's generally September through April, and then the rest of the time, I would be back in Oklahoma.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been back to visit since you stopped working up there?
I haven't, no.
You miss it?
I do, yeah.
I can see why. I mean, I haven't been up there, just in photos, and, friends who, I was with a couple of guys last week. They have a fishing resort on Vancouver Island, and they're like, you gotta come up, they have like 2 fishing resorts, a north and a south. One is like kind of on the boat fishing, the other one is hella fishing. So I met the pilot and the guy who runs the resort, and he's like, you gotta come up, like, we'll do you a killer deal. Like, killer deal is still $2,200 a day, but it's like, you're kind of holding on. Some of the videos of the guys on the boats, they're like holding up fish or throwing fish in the air, and the eagles are coming down and it's wild stuff.
Wow.
Or like you're in a helicopter and they're just like, oh, there's no fish here, let's just jump in and fly somewhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's my buddy who's in Vancouver right now. He said it's just the best place in the world. He loves to ski. You got the beach and everything too. He's like, what more could I ever want? Especially coming from Wales.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's grim and dark in the winter at 4:00.
Yeah.
But I got to get up there for sure. It's fabulous place for sure.
Definitely. And like, what I found is a lot of people are attracted to like the big areas like Vancouver, but if you get even just out of those areas, you can save some money, and you can just find beautiful, beautiful spots just in the middle of nowhere. And if you're a fisherman, like the fly fishing, I used to fly fish all the time, and it's just magic.
Yeah,
just
I'm not into that, but I've said if I'm going there, I can get into it, right? It's like, it's like going kind of deep sea fishing. Like, you could never fish for the rest of your life. You've done something that like most people don't get to do. So yes, I'm going to go do it. Bucket list stuff. So you meet your wife, and then you said kind of 07 to 09, you kind of you make the decision to come back, to move to Oklahoma in 09. What's the first time coming to Oklahoma like, and what time of year was it?
Oh gosh, we're going back, huh? We came. So my wife lived over in Kingfisher at the time. So for the longest time, I was just flying into Oklahoma City, and then we would drive. So that's all I saw of Oklahoma for probably a year. I'm like, there's no trees. It's flat. It's nothing like where I just came from. And so I mean, I love the weather, and, the warmth and everything, and the sun, and just getting a tan, just being outside. Like this is for a pasty white Brit. This was something I wasn't used to, and so I loved all that. She lived in Kingfisher. Like I said, it was flat and featureless, but it was still like it had this charm. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that before, honestly. I mean, even in Canada, working on I guess the closest you could say was in Saskatchewan, but and then and then when she came to Canada, and she's like, I really don't think I could live this. I love it, but these winters are something else. And she's like, I miss my son. Yeah. So I said, well, we should probably seriously look at where we're going to live in Oklahoma. And then I started to look a lot more closely, and I see, well, there's trees there. Can we check out some of these areas? And what do you think about here? And like you get those trees. Once you get east of I-35, you got trees, just solid trees essentially. And I'm like, so maybe we could just live in the transition zone somewhere. So we just started looking up and down I-35 at where to live, and we ended up. My wife was very into Edmond, and so that's kind of where we wound up. We focused on and found a place there.
Nice.
Yeah, she was going to University in Norman for a while, so we were renting in Norman and kind of driving every Sunday to look at houses up in Edmond, and I just loved the whole idea of having a little lot with trees and stuff like that, because as much as I love Canada, like having something like that was very, very out of my reach financially. So in Oklahoma, it's actually something that was achievable.
Yeah, it's pretty attainable here, isn't it? Like
yes.
The value is, and my day job's in the real estate world, so like I totally get what you're saying. Like and I don't think people realize still the amount of trees and opportunity and great land there is east of I-35. It just has a mental block. They're like, I don't want to go over there, I want to live over there. And even if you get up to Arcadia and East Edmond or whatever it is, like people like get tied that some people, for example, like, oh, it's an extra 5 minutes to work. Who cares? Like you got beautiful views, and anyway, that's I don't have to get into some of the battles I have with my day job, but some of that is that. But yeah, it can be painful. So 2019, you kind of stopped going to Canada, basically. You kind of get a job in the same industry, or do you mentioned the oil field kind of bottom falls out? Do you just pivot and go somewhere else?
Yeah, I looked around for a while, and there's really, it wasn't working out. So I started to think of, well, what can I do at my age that it's going to afford me some extra time so I can pursue photography as well, and hopefully both things take off. Whatever else I choose and photography, they can both take off at the same time. So I decided to go back to college and get and go for like a nursing degree.
Oh wow, yeah.
And because that's what my wife is. She's a nurse, and it's super flexible time scheduling and everything else, and really you can work anywhere, and they're highly in need, and it's so that's the kind of direction I went. So I've been in school. I just kind of got out and
nice.
Dealing with all that right now, getting my board certification, and then
cool.
Because there's kind of limited options when you get to a certain age and you change directions. So,
but you're right though. It's still kind of fun to have that flexibility, and also, I mean, a lot of people would, a kind of your age or your kind of career, they would be like, oh well, I do this, like this is all I've ever done, I do this, why go back to school? Let me just find something that's around that.
Yes.
But obviously, you had your non-negotiables. You're like, hey, I need to find time to do photography too, like, and not worried about going back to school. And
yeah. Well, it's like I had a very, very what I did in Canada was a very, very specific job that really doesn't translate down to Oklahoma either. I mean, the way they operate oil and gas operations here is a lot different than up there.
Okay.
And so I was having a lot of difficulty finding that connection, and then just the oil and gas industry in general kind of just the especially the exploration, which is where I had all my experience, just wasn't it wasn't busy anymore. That was it. It just kind of slowed right down. And so I like my photography. I was thinking, well, I could maybe try and do headshots and stuff. That's very saturated. I tried that for a while. I tried a whole different bunch of things, and just kind of, I had to make a decision at one point. I got to do something direct, and so that's when I decided just to start college. I'm like, you gotta get moving on something new here.
Yeah. So the obviously through this kind of period, you've always had a passion for photography. You're taking photos, and you're doing landscape stuff, and you're doing kind of dark night photography already in Canada, and then you come down here and you're like trying to figure out what to do. Can I build a business around photography? When do you start storm chasing and get into the storm photography side of things?
Oh wow, it was just like right away. I mean,
so you were very aware of it when you came to Oklahoma. You're like, I can jump in the car and go chase storms.
No, I was. I'd say when it first clicked is when we went camping. We went camping down in down in southern Oklahoma. There, we went camping, and I had my camera gear with me, and this storm popped up at like 11 o'clock at night, and I just sat outside of our little cabin, and I didn't know what I was doing really. I just knew I had to be in focus, so I made sure I was in focus, and I just kept taking shots of this storm. And when I started to see what was on the back of the camera, like, it was just phenomenal. It was a big, crispy updraft with the stars behind, and then every once in a while there was lightning licking out of it, and it's like, wow, this is really, really, really cool. And so I'm like, I got to do more of this. And then I just really, after that, it was just, I didn't forecast. I didn't look at anything really. It was just when the opportunity arose, I would go and take pictures trying to get pictures of lightning and storms. And then with social media, started posting, and then you kind of, people comment, you meet people, you get to just look at their profiles, and then profile. And then after a while, I realized there's a whole community based around this, like a really, really cool, inviting community where people share ideas and share pictures and share, forecasting tips and everything else. And so through social media, I did start to follow a bunch of people, and then I kind of learned actually a lot through Michael Sager, how to do some better forecasting and get my skills up there, and from there it was just kind of, it just snowballed. It's like once you know what you can get, you do not want to miss out on getting that when the opportunity arises. Yeah. So the deeper you get into it, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Because Michael Sager, previously on the podcast, for people listening that might have not listened to that one yet, he's a weatherman in Tulsa and obviously loves photography. And, if you've got someone like that in your community that knows what they're talking about with weather, that helps tremendously. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, just all these professionals, it's just incredible. Yeah. And everybody's so open, and there's, it's a great community.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of knowledge kicking around, lots of.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite chase stories?
Oh goodness. I think the one that pops into mind most recently was I was doing a little workshop with a guest, and we were up in Wyoming, and so I know we haven't talked about it yet, but the main focus of my workshops is the Red Sprites, the night sky photography and stuff like that. But I will, if the opportunity arises, and it's not too far away from our original plan, I will try and get onto other storms, like daytime storms. And so I saw this opportunity there was a big tornado watch out in Wyoming, kind of close to where I wanted to set up for the night. So I said to him, like, hey, I kind of want to hang around. I want to get up into this area during the day, and I think it's going to be a good day. But so anyways, we went about 90 minutes out of our way and sat in this area, and sure enough, there was a storm that paralleled a road we were on. So and it produced like 3 or 4 tornadoes, and it had some beautiful structure. We saw everything from beautiful mammatus clouds to huge tornadoes to beautiful supercell structure and everything else. And it was his first time seeing a tornado, and I think that was probably one of my favorite moments, was his reaction to that. And that kind of took me back to my first time and everything else. And it's just weather. Every storm is different. Every tornado is different. Every sprite is different. Every night is different. It's like you never get tired of it. It just pumps you full of that first time energy every time. At least it does for me. So that's my most recent best storm chase, I think, was that one.
So do you do a lot of, when you can, do a lot of kind of workshop stuff with guys who want to get into photography, girls who want to get into photography on the road and just travel with you, and kind of, obviously it can be part of the business too, right? Yeah.
I'm mostly focusing on the Red Sprites just because it's so unique, and I'm kind of the only person offering that. And so I figure that's a good place to go, and it's something I know inside and out. And there's a lot of storm chasing tour groups out there already, so I didn't kind of want to compete with. My idea was just to kind of focus in on one area and make it something that I'm really good at. And so I offer workshops. I've had many successful workshops right now. So
tell me about the Red Stripes then. The Red Sprites. What's that all about?
So the Red Sprites are essentially like a mini aurora above a storm. It's a really brief flash, but it's where the upper atmosphere gets excited into these crazy shapes, all different kinds of shapes and sizes, and they flash red. And it's almost like the process of the aurora, where the atmosphere is getting excited for, in the case of a Red Sprite, a brief moment in time. Yeah. So it kind of tied in. To chase Red Sprites for me is kind of tied in with my whole enjoying storm chasing and my night sky experience, bringing down from shooting Northern Lights in Canada and whatever else. So it's been a really fun process, kind of figuring them out, and really they aren't that well known. So really, to get most information from them, you've got to get into actual scientific journals and kind of read through them and flick through them and decipher all that fancy scientific lingo and try and translate it into the real world and figure out where I can shoot them and how I can shoot them. So it's been a fun kind of process, and very rewarding, extremely rewarding.
What have you kind of found out then about that? Like from, and it's quite an unknown, most people. Can you see them, you say for a brief moment, did they just come up on camera, or can you see them in person as well, like for a brief moment?
You can see them, you can see them with your eyes, If you're in dark enough skies, and your eyes are night adjusted, you haven't been looking at your phone, right? And you're looking in pretty much the right spot. Like they might only fill a small box like the size of your fist in the sky. So if you're not looking right at it, you might not even see it.
Yeah.
And it's so fast that that's the main reason people, the most commonly asked question is like, I've never seen this before. This is fake. It must be fake. How have I not seen this before? Well, it's super fast, right? Like it's you wouldn't, unless you were looking right for it, you wouldn't see something that transient. So, but when you do, when you're looking right at it and your eyes are adjusted, they're very obvious.
And is there anything that's kind of like surprised you from researching it? And because is there some spiritual things towards it as well from certain like communities that think it's spiritual, or like, is there anything that's just popped out? Like, I mean, it's not just like red jellyfish in the sky. Like, it looks incredible, but I'm sure people take different meanings for different things too.
Yeah. I don't know. Some things I've been interested in is like looking at some of these cave paintings that you see around, like what were they trying to tell us back then? Sure. Could this have been that? And I mean, you do kind of try to fit the puzzle together as best you try to make it like you go out with an intent of connecting red sprites to cave paintings. You're going to be able to make that connection, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, who's to say what was going on? But I mean, I just think now I've seen so many. I think if ancient man sitting on the plains, no light pollution, and you just know they were fascinated with storms and weather and stuff, right? Yeah. So they were probably sitting watching storms in the distance. They had to have seen them. Yeah. Had to have seen them. So it just makes me the one thing that I think is how I mean, they were only really discovered in 1989 when they were captured on camera. So I just think of all that time before that, all that eyes that have seen them. How was it communicated? How did it not become common? How did it not become common knowledge until 1989? That's a fascinating thing to me.
Yeah, well, and the places that you're at, like you're in the middle of nowhere, right? Like it's, you're for the most part, obviously, to be in the middle of nowhere, you don't have light pollution, so clear skies, middle of nowhere, and you just have that moment. You're like, for thousands of years, people have probably seen these. Right. Yeah. And now only since 1989 we have seen these because it's been caught on camera. But like, yes, I mean, they're a pretty powerful moment to be out there, right? And you just, even if you're with someone on your own, you're like, this is really freaking cool.
Yeah, I had my first workshop guest when he first saw one with his eyes. He cursed, and then he said, "I came here because I didn't believe you."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, thanks. He's like, no, but I really didn't believe you. But like, he's like, this is wild. He's like, how have we not? How do people not know about it? I'm like, well, I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of weird that it's something so fast, and if you're not looking for it, maybe because it's so fast, your brain doesn't put two and two together that it is something other than a flash in the sky, if that makes sense. And so you need to have that flash in the sky is this, so that now when you see that flash in the sky, you know what it is. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, it's very, very, very cool.
Yeah.
And in Oklahoma, most people live in light polluted areas, so yeah, we see storms and stuff, but to actually see the dark night sky is something that's very uncommon for the average person in Oklahoma, driving from Oklahoma City to wherever at night, or once you get east of I-35, there are trees and there's a lot more light pollution because there's a lot more people. So I just don't think it's something that people have the opportunity to see anymore with all the light pollution.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Like people growing up now are just not aware of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like they just, I sometimes see stars in the sky and that's it. They don't think about, whenever do they go into the middle of the countryside, look up and be like, wow, we actually have a pretty epic solar system. And it's really cool unless you're in the photography world, like you don't do that.
Yes.
So it's kind of sad, really.
yeah, even like the Milky Way, like there's so many people who haven't seen, like a lot of times I'll post pictures of the Milky Way and people are like, I've never seen that in my life. Like, well, you got to kind of, you might have to drive. A lot of people have to drive, but I think like if you live in the eastern US, you got to drive a lot further.
Yeah.
Like we're just kind of on that transition zone where it gets a lot darker to the west of where we are, just in general over the whole of the States, but to the east of us, there's a lot of light pollution.
That's unfortunate for them, for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned social media and posting a little bit. Social media, yours has kind of rocketed, right, over the last couple of years, and obviously it's huge help to the business and prints. And I was looking through your link tree. It says, buy me a coffee. Do people ever buy you coffee?
Yeah. It's
I need to add that to mine. That's a great idea.
Yeah, well, you have a couple of things you can do now, right? There's Patreon, and this is just another kind of version of that. And really, I set that up as a means to, because I'm involved in with the Sprites, I'm involved in a lot of citizen science projects where I share my findings, my research with scientists, and so it's kind of. It is actually, there's a lot of kind of actually groundbreaking stuff coming up from this, where the stuff that hasn't been witnessed in the upper atmosphere before that I've caught on film, and we're busy analyzing it. So there is a citizen science aspect to it, but the unfortunate side of that is it's not, citizen science is not a paid thing. There's no citizen science fund, unfortunately. So I really wanted to, people get really interested in the science side of it. My YouTube channel, I get lots of comments, people questioning it, and they have their input into the science of it. So I thought it would be to set up the Buy Me a Coffee would be a good way for people to kind of help fund the citizen science, help me put some gas in the tank, help me with, because I go through, my gear gets broken a lot.
I was going to say, the other question is how many miles are on the car right now?
My goodness.
Yeah.
It's, there's a lot of wear and tear on gear and stuff.
Right.
So I know some people understand the challenges, but many people don't. So I just kind of put it out there with the Buy Me a Coffee that, if you can support, that would really help. And you're actually helping with real science discovery,
right,
as well as seeing pretty pictures on my Instagram account. There is some science behind this that's actually helping us. I mean, it might help us understand some of the climatology and things like that's going on right now.
What's the YouTube channel?
It's all my Paul M. Smith photography handle. Yeah,
I'll look it up.
Yeah,
I mean, it's such a great way to get, and obviously it's free, right?
Yes.
I mean, posting content's free, other than you traveling, spending money on gas and cars and all the other stuff, that like the wear and tear of camera gear and all the other stuff. But like, it's such a great kind of platform to use, and if you can kind of unlock that and make a little bit of money out of it, then it just funds the hobby, right? Like, that's kind of why I started mine, was like, it's the whole goal at the start was like, it's going to fund, I'm a golfer, right? It's going to fund me to play golf. It's going to fund maybe a second car one day. Who knows?
There you go.
And then it just keeps going, and you're just like, how have we got here, right? It starts with one little idea, and then, you're closing in on 100,000 subscribers, 100,000 followers on Instagram, which, some kids growing up now dream of that, right? Which is kind of, it's fun, but it's also kind of sad in a way. But, when you use that for good, right, and use it for science, or you use it for, showing off these epic things that a lot of people don't get to see, like it's pretty freaking awesome. Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, we're in a content-driven world, right? Mm-hmm. And all these different, like as of right now, there's no real way to monetize effectively on these channels. So people think, like I got friends who are close to 1 million followers on Instagram, and they're like, we don't make any money, and it's like, man, but you're such an important part of Instagram, like that's kind of crazy that you don't get anything for that. And you have these symbiotic relationships with these platforms where yeah, they're a platform for you, but also without you, they wouldn't be a platform. You know what I mean? So I almost feel like, I wish there was some kind of monetization for having your content on there, whether it's, a great podcast or pretty pictures or whatever, but we're just not there yet. I mean, Instagram tried it. I was doing pretty good on the reels for a little while. And then when I was going to have my best month ever for monetized reels, they shut it down.
Because you had was there one or two had like over a million views, right? Like they were kind of really popping off, and I reshared a bunch of them. Like they did great. And they do great. It's just like, how do you monetize that, right? How do you drive them to a link that says, buy me a coffee or pay for a get tank gas or support whatever it is. Like that's kind of, it's trying to figure out that, right? But like you say, we're a content driven world and everyone's just flicking through so fast that it's hard to get them to stop and be like, oh wow, like how do I support this person, until they probably follow you for a long time.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's even besides the monetization, it's still fun, and it's fun to interact with people, and it's really, I've had made some amazing contacts through it. I mean, some of the people I talk to now, I don't think there was ever in history before social media, there wouldn't have been a direct path for me to be able to talk to some of the people I'm talking to on a regular basis now, So, I mean, that's pretty amazing in itself.
Yeah.
So it's, if I can make some money, that's what I'm going to try and do. I got some good friends that make money in content, and the best advice I got is just don't focus on one thing. You've got to try and
do it all.
Just pull in little pieces here and there from everywhere. So that's kind of where I'm at the point of my growth. I'm trying to do that, get as much as I can from anywhere. And it's really the fun gas and gear.
Well, right.
Goodness.
Because at the end of the day, this is a hobby for you, right? Like you have a day job, or you will have a day job soon.
Yeah.
It's it's not something that it'll be great to just do this for the rest of your life, and maybe that one day that does happen. But for right now, it's like, no, I just need to fund some gear and gas.
Yeah.
And, an oil change and maybe a new set of tires every now and then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me about your gear. You don't have to nerd out on it, or you don't have to dive into it too much if you don't want to, but I mean, do you use a local camera store here as well?
No, I have. I'm thrifty, cheap.
Okay. Yeah.
So I pretty much everything I have is secondhand.
There's people listening to this that are thinking, that's great, because they don't want to go out, because they see some people doing photography and they're like, my entire setup cost me $20,000. And they're like, what? Like, I don't do that. But it's good to know that you can, the stuff that you do and the quality of the work you do comes from being thrifty and getting secondhand cameras.
Yeah, like a lot of my original cameras, my original full frame camera is still clicking right now, so that's what a lot of my time lapses are from 7 years ago now, 7-year-old cameras and gear. So I'm just as thrifty as possible. I get cameras and lenses when I see good deals, and I have a hard time parting with them, so I kind of have a big collection of stuff that I should be probably downsizing.
Well, it's stuff that's in the toolbox, right? You look at it like, this is my toolbox.
Yeah. And then if you did get rid of it, you're going to have needed it for the next week, right?
Have you thought about trying to connect with local camera stores and people? And I mean, because of your following now, I assume it'd be great to have a brand ambassador of something.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Just something to help at least with cost, or even if you get for me, this camera. So I work with Bedford's Camera in town. Okay. And got connected to them through Matt Payne, who's a travel photographer. Okay. And does stuff with the movies now. But I just get free rentals. So this whole camera setup that I use, shout out to Bedford's Camera, because they're awesome. So I'll connect you later.
That's great.
Because Eric there is great. The whole team, Eric, Martin, Christian, they're camera guys, right? They get it and they do everything. So it would make sense that someone who has a big following has a partner that's it's not like you're selling something that's totally different or kind of you're a brand ambassador for something you would use every day, or even if it's a tripod or gear, it's still a backpack or whatever it is. It's all photography related. So
yeah, true enough.
It seems like a no-brainer, and just help you save some money as well.
That all helps, man.
Yeah.
All helps.
Maybe then you can get what is it, like some of the storm chasers, like Val Castor, he got a truck and a roofing contact and all the other stuff. Like just finding stuff that's within your kind of realm that you like, it would make sense to do a partnership, even if it's just product, right? Like it saves a ton of money.
Yeah, it's a whole side to like photography. Yeah, I think you're right. The most successful people are the ones who also have a business sense about it, Yeah. And so I'm more of the creative type. I spend a ton of time getting the image, getting the footage, processing it, presenting it. Business side of it, I'm like,
you're on to the next thing, right? Like that's
exactly. It's like when 90% of your time is the collecting and the presenting, then the 10% is trying to okay, how do I monetize? Oh, okay, I got to go do something else now.
Yeah. Well, and also you have a day job and all the other stuff and life and a wife and all the other stuff, right? It's not just like
precisely.
You don't have 24 hours in the day just doing photography.
Precisely.
What's coming up? What's next? Is there anything big stuff you have coming up this fall and then towards the end of the year?
I don't have anything planned yet. The storm season still, it's just not quitting here. So I'm just
crazy.
I'm just getting
still going.
I know.
God, it's nuts.
I'm just getting out as much as I can. I was hoping to get out to the desert Southwest because they got that monsoon going on right now.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make that an annual thing, but I don't think it's going to work out. I have a really good opportunity, if I can make it happen, to go international in December, but it's a lot of things have to come together for that. Right. So. And other than that, I got an exciting prospect with an atmospheric scientist group who I could perhaps early next spring be part of a research program, which has me absolutely thrilled to the bones. If it comes together, it will be something that, it would be the best thing that have happened to me in a long time.
Awesome. So there's so much out there that the majority of the people in the city, in the world, whatever it is, they don't get to see, like we said earlier, they don't get to see these dark, big, awesome skies. And they're not aware of what's actually out there as well. And like you said, when you do your research and you talk about the atmosphere and what's actually out there and the things that we're seeing, and then you hear the media talking about aliens and UAPs and all the other stuff, you're just like, there's a lot of shooting stars out there as well, guys. It's not, but has any of that, have people asked you about that as well? Like, have you had any experiences, do they ask you, hey, you're in the middle of nowhere in dark skies, like, what have you seen?
Yeah, there's... To that point, I kind of like to push, hey, we don't need to sensationalize here, guys. There's some really neat, actual, real stuff happening. Like, look at this. But as far as me seeing anything, I did... I hadn't seen anything really unexplainable in 7 years. I did see a bright orange light actually one time in Canada, way over towards the Rocky foothills where there shouldn't have been any aircraft or anything, but who knows, I guess. But it was something very unusual, moving slowly away from me, an orange light went over the mountains. I don't know what that was. Will we ever find out? Probably not.
Yeah.
Neat little mystery. We'll go with that. And then when I was in the Pacific earlier in the year here, I did see something. I caught it on a camera, something fast, like flying lower than the clouds, very fast, bright streak that I can't explain.
Yeah.
Another thing, we'll probably never find out exactly what it was, but so I'm always curious. I'm always looking out for stuff like that. I'm actually really, really trying to, I can't really say trying because you can't forecast, but ball lightning.
Yeah.
I really want to focus in on that because I'm getting to the point in my mind now that I think there was a time I didn't think it was real, and now I'm kind of swaying more towards hey, there's so much neat stuff out there. I guarantee, I'm sure it happens. It's just so rare that it's not, we're not seeing it that much. So I'm in talks with a couple of really high atmospheric scientists who they're like, this is the direction we're kind of researching now. So I really want to see if I can capture ball lightning.
Yeah. Do you know, is there like a hot spot? Do you know where roughly it happens, or could it be anywhere?
There's two things that run through my mind when I think about it. So I think you're kind of looking for sandy environments. Okay, because it's got to like interact with the ground and the silicon. That's one theory of how the lightning hitting sandy environment. And I'm also drawn towards these really, really powerful, you can get these really powerful positive lightning strikes with a very, very rare. And I captured a transient luminous event that's called an ELV.
Okay.
People have to go look at my page. It's hard to describe, but it's very, very high up. It's basically on the edge of space, the ionosphere. And it's like an EMP, electromagnetic pulse from a particularly strong lightning strike. Like we're talking about 15, 20 times stronger than a regular bolt, right? Very, very uncommon. Maybe one in every 5,000 bolts or something like that. I just pulled that number out, but very uncommon.
Very rare, yeah.
So if I caught this thing called the ELV in the upper atmosphere. Out of all hours I've looked, I've caught maybe a handful, but this one in particular was very, very banded, very, very interesting. So it just gets me thinking, well, what could be happening on the ground with such a powerful bolt? I think that could be somewhere maybe that you might get something like ball lightning. I don't know, perhaps. Will we ever? It's another thing, will we ever find out? I don't know, because you can't forecast exactly where a big, super powerful bolt of lightning is going to hit at a time. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're just not there yet. So it's just going to be one of those things, I think, if we just spend enough time, get enough people researching, looking in the right places, then I think we might get lucky. Yeah. But will that happen in my lifetime? I don't know.
Well, that's what keeps you going, right? That's what kind of keeps you, chasing and keeps you excited about, going out there every day. And like I said, when you tie into, like scientific stuff as well, like this stuff's got a lot of meaning. It's not just you taking photos in the dark on your own in the middle of nowhere, driving 4,000 miles somewhere, 2,000 out, 2,000 back kind of thing. Like it obviously excites you, and it's something that, it's something that means a lot to you, right? And it's, we've all got to find a hobby and make it, and if you make a little difference as well, that's, I find something that, opens people's eyes to certain things. And like I said, these sprites, like I'd never seen them before I saw your photos. And I had no idea what they were, and then, you look at them, you're like, wow, like that's so cool. And I can see why a lot of people think they're fake, because they look like streams of jellyfish in the sky. Yeah. And they're red, Yeah. But it's that's awesome. It's super cool.
And then when you explain the size, when you're like, hey, that's the size of like Dallas metro area, it's just, people are just
gone. Right? Absolutely gone.
Yeah.
Well, mate, I appreciate you coming in. It's been a pleasure. Dive through your story and kind of, just put a little bit of context into what people see on Instagram. For people listening, I'll put the link to your Instagram and YouTube in the description. It's Paul M. Smith at Paul M. Smith Photography on Instagram. And go check it out. And if you want to go do a workshop, they can go to the website, and I'll put that link as well. Spritechaser.com, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, spritechaser.com. And if you want to get out into the middle of nowhere and see these red things, I'd highly recommend it. I need to get on the list. So it'd be awesome. But Paul, thanks for coming down. I really appreciate it. For people listening, we will catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us Saturday, September 30th for our Sobriety Sprint 5K as we remember, honor, and celebrate those who've lost their lives. This family-focused event will feature a 1-mile fun run, inflatables, food trucks, and more. Register to run or honor a loved one at sobrietysprint.com.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.